We're all targets now, though, for daring to push back against the regime, and it doesn't stop at a weaponized legal system. I'm not going to mince words with you all. Democrats want Republicans dead, and they've already started the killings.
They've already started the killings, Michael Steele. And so when you frame it that way, well, anything goes. Anything you have to do to stop these people that are doing the killings.
Yeah, that's the point.
That was former Republican Chairman Michael Steele admitting that the Republican Party has become a front group for fascism in the United States. And Marjorie Taylor Greene's rallying call to the authoritarian right isn't just some fringe position. It's rapidly becoming the defining trait of the GOP.
You grease the skids as much as you can. You create as little resistance by taking the most extreme posture rhetorically. And in the past, when it was the John Birch Society, when it was, what we saw with John McCain during the presidential race, the attacks on Barack Obama, the leadership of the party said no. They stood up against that. They responded to it, right? They didn't hemida or go silent.
And boy, have Republicans ever been greasing the skids to sell their retooled brand of fascism to the American people. That was on full display on Thursday when the Federalist published what may be the GOP's clearest call for fascism yet, with language straight out of 1930s Germany and policy proposals to match. Buckle up. This is going to get dark. In an article heavily promoted by the Federalist, right-wing crank John Daniel Davidson lays out his plan for a post-freedom America. He says the Republican Party's conservative project has failed, and it's time for something new. That's something new? Well, it looks a lot like fascism. Western civilization is dying, Davidson writes, and in order to maintain power, Republicans will need to, in his words, refound America under a new set of values. He calls for a radical counter-revolutionary state that cracks down on personal freedoms in favor of what can best be described as modern Christo-fascism. So what does that look like? Well, Davidson calls for turning the government into what he calls a blunt instrument for beating so-called liberals into submission. He proposes making no-fault divorce illegal and defunding public universities that give our kids dangerous thoughts. He dismisses the free market and small government as fantasy talk. Davidson's new government is not small, and it certainly isn't free. Davidson also calls for abortion to be made a crime equal to premeditated murder, potentially exposing women and doctors to the death penalty. He proposes what he calls a dramatic expansion of the criminal code, which means creating more laws which Republicans can use to lock up their political opponents. And yeah, we aren't done yet. This new GOP would make drag queen story hours a criminal offense. It would also jail parents for taking children to events Republicans deem morally inappropriate. Parents and doctors who seek support for their transgender kids would be jailed, as would teachers who teach sex education. In this new America, the jails are filling up fast. And what happens when all those liberals are in jail for the rest of their lives and Republicans have established a one-party state? Well, in Davidson's view, that's when Republicans should decide to rule forever. As Davidson writes, the question of whether this new fascist GOP would ever give up power is a question for after the war is over and democracy is defeated. Is all of this starting to sound a little familiar? And the Federalist is just getting started. Take this line, arguing that Republicans failed because they didn't oppose technological change enough. Davidson says the real threat to traditional values is, quote, technological change so swift and powerful it fundamentally reordered society and swept tradition aside. Now let me show you a very similar quote. This one also calls Republicans foolish because they, quote, enthusiastically support technological progress. This quote also criticizes Republicans for embracing what it calls rapid, drastic changes in technology and the economy, and blames technology for destroying traditional society. But this quote is from the manifesto of Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. The Federalist has the ear of some of the biggest rising stars in Republican politics, and not a single Republican has yet spoken out to condemn this sweeping dream of a new American Reich. That's because, for the most part, Republicans are either too scared to speak out, or they agree with this march to the Gulag state. Unlimited power, after all, is the ultimate goal. And this fascist apology tour is catching on even among regular Republican voters. Take this weirdo, who spent the afternoon at work pledging allegiance to Vladimir Putin and begging the fascist leader to go easy on Americans who welcome Russian-style authoritarianism.
So Putin warned the West that his nuclear threat is not a bluff. I think we all know that. I think everybody respects Putin for being the nationalist that he is towards Russia. That's what we want for our country in America. And I just wanted to send this message out to Putin. I'm sure it's not going to get to you, but please understand how many millions and millions of people in this country support everything that you stand for and are against everything that we see happening in our government right now. So I hope if you decide to use something or have to use something, that you use it very tactically and very pointedly to the people that are the problem in your life and to your country. Please spare the good people in this country.
How we respond to these threats now will determine the shape of American democracy in the future, and if American democracy even survives. Trust these people when they tell you who they are and what kind of government they want, because it's a government that wants to see you put behind bars for the simple act of exercising your rights. Whew, that was bleak. If you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like and consider subscribing. And leave a comment below so you can let me know what I should cover next.